Back then, Kanan kept us in line. Taught us the business, made us men. Ghost and I owe your father big.
It's time for you to be baptized into this life. Just like Kanan did for me and Ghost.
Who?
It's a story for a different time.
Now, in episode 4, everybody seems to be hiding something. There are people who are pretending to be loyal, and everybody's playing a game that they swear they're not playing. Tommy walked in on Diamond welcoming DMac back into the CBI at the end of the last episode, and that one moment alone tells you everything that you need to know about episode 4. Sometimes the real war isn't fought with guns, it's fought with leverage, lies, and loyalty. Diamond giving Tommy half the truth, DMac creating a problem that he's not ready for, Claudia's gambling her life to save herself, Stacey Marks thinks she has both Vic and Claudia Flynn right where she wants them. Meanwhile, Detective Seng is planning to take over from within law enforcement. Miguel Garcia is still plotting behind Tommy, Shay, and Maria's back, and with Shanti, she's stopped back in Jannard. Everybody thinks they're pulling the strings, but truth isn't just another weapon. In episode 4, it's the deadliest one on the chessboard. With that being said, that's the theme. There are also a lot of OG Power references in this particular episode 4 breakdown, so definitely stick with it right through to the very end, as we run through all things Power Book 4 Force, Season 3, Episode 4. Now, towards the end of episode 3, we saw Tommy walk in on Jannard and Diamond, welcoming DMac back into the CBI. That was after he pulled off a move that they set up with the 9-7s, that they thought would end up with DMac dead, and in turn, solve their problems with King Kilo. The problem was, he survived, and in that moment, they had no choice but to welcome him back to the CBI. Now, Tommy was fuming. I think we could all tell with the look on his face and the tone of his voice. One thing that Tommy has always hated is people going behind his back. Now, Diamond said he rightfully earned his place back into the CBI, but this was Tommy's nephew. It wasn't Diamond's call to make. He made it crystal clear back in episode 2, for as long as he was in the CBI, DMac was out. He didn't want DMac anywhere near this life, and he actually questioned Diamond, why are you encouraging DMac despite his orders? And this is something else that we've been speaking about over the past few weeks, and also going back to season 2. Tommy treating Diamond more like his number 2 than his equal. This definitely gives shades of Tommy and Ghost's so-called partnership back in power. It's the exact same thing Ghost used to do to Tommy. But he continued to question Diamond, and this is where he gave him half the truth.
My man Kanan used to say, every good lie is veiled in the truth.
In one of the previous teasers that we've seen, we know at some point later on in season 3, Tommy will definitely tell DMac that Kanan once taught him every good lie is veiled in the truth. And that's what Diamond did here. He told him half the truth. DMac definitely did hit Mad Dog, who happened to be King Kilo's nephew, and now he wants DMac dead, which is true. But the part that he lied about was bringing him into the CBI to keep him close, bringing him into the CBI to protect him until he could figure out a plan. We already know what Diamond's plan was. He called the hit on DMac way back in episode 1. So even though Diamond came clean to Tommy, it wasn't the full truth. And so this business relationship, partnership, call it what you will, is still teetering on very thin ice. But the problem continued to mount with the SODs also wanting out of their coalition as well, which we definitely will come to later on in the breakdown. Now with DMac, he was back at Marshall's apartment on FaceTime with Genesis, but she honestly wasn't impressed. What would impress her is a diploma. The problem is he's about to earn his PhD in the streets, not a diploma in school, which we definitely have also spoken about before. He needs to learn that his actions have consequences, and I do think Genesis could fall into that category. Same thing with JP. We saw his return in episode 4 as well. All he wants to do is help DMac and be there for him. This conversation also definitely needed to be had because of how they left things towards the end of season 2. DMac said a few things that he definitely shouldn't have, and he did apologize. But again, just like the situation with Genesis, I do feel like his actions will end up having consequences. And the 3 characters that we have spoken about are JP, Genesis, and Marshall. But Tommy walks in and questions DMac about Mad Dog. The problem now is Mad Dog was King Kilo's nephew, and DMac caused a big problem within their coalition, with DMac's response actually being, he'll smoke King Kilo too. And look, there is no doubt DMac is definitely a killer. There is no other way to put it. Diamond was definitely right earlier on in the conversation, but I'm not too sure whether DMac will end up smoking King Kilo. I mean, he might, who knows? We've seen Kanan take out Ronnie before in Raising Kanan. That was a big kill, so let's wait and see. One thing we definitely do know for sure, he definitely is an amateur. He still had the murder weapon, and this is a part of what Tommy will need to teach him. Just like Tasha once taught Tariq after he killed Ray Ray. They needed to burn his clothes. He needed to go home, brush under his fingernails and shower. Same thing in Raising Kanan. When Kanan shot Buck 20 and Detective Howard, burn the jumper, brush under your nails. DMac is definitely about to earn his PhD in the streets. But at this moment in time in the episode, Tommy was still dead set against it. He said he could do whatever he wanted, kill, destroy, steal. He was never going to change his mind, but we will get there later on towards the end. Now, I do think this is probably the moment where DMac should have also come clean about the other hit that him and Marshall made in episode 2. They hit the Chinese gambling spot and stole hella cash, as well as a brick worth 20 grand. That's something that will definitely come back, and I do think DMac should have come clean while everything was coming out about Mad Dog. And that's what I mean about hiding the truth, and DMac's actions potentially having consequences. He could be just walking with Genesis, minding his own business, just like Tommy and Maria were when they were eating pizza. We saw how the Marquez cartel came for them. The Chinese could easily roll upon DMac in the wrong place at the wrong time, with the wrong person being caught in the crossfire. His actions will definitely have consequences at some point, and the Chinese are definitely still ones to keep in mind. But over to the storyline surrounding law enforcement, which includes Stacey Marks, Claudia Flynn, and Detective Seng. Now, Stacey Marks is well aware there is a war brewing in the streets between the Marquez cartel and the CBI, because there's a lot of blood in the streets. We also had Detective Seng walk in. He just came back from court to dispute Ortega's lawyer's motion to dismiss the drugs and cash. Back in episode 3, it was revealed there was a wrong digit on the address of the warrant. That was purposefully done by Detective Seng, who was revealed to be working for the Ortegas. A great twist. Within all these triangles at play, we have a triangle within a triangle, and it definitely is getting spicy as each episode passes by. But Bobby DeFranco also walked in and dropped the information that a dozen bodies were found at a frat house thanks to fentanyl hitting the streets of Chicago. That could be because of the Chinese, it could even be the brick that Jannard may have got rid of in the streets. They also linked it to potentially the Marquez cartel being in town, and that was the cue for Stacey Marks to pay Claudia Flynn a visit. She questioned whether the Marquez cartel were pushing fentanyl in Chicago, but we know Claudia's stance from previous conversations that go back to episode 1. Later on, she did change her tune, but at this moment in time, she was still refusing to cooperate on anything to do with the Marquez cartel. She was, however, willing to negotiate. She mentioned that in a couple of days she can have Tommy confessing to a murder and him being one of Chicago's major distributors, but it would be easier if she was out of jail doing it herself. Now, Stacey Marks wasn't willing to allow Claudia out of jail just yet, but she did mention if she could get Tommy Egan on tape that he's moving weight for the Estrada cartel, then they can talk. But if not, she will tip off the Marquez cartel that Claudia's been talking to law enforcement. And this is what Stacey Marks does. We've seen it with Vic Flynn, constantly moving the goalposts, constantly changing the terms, because she'll only give the Flynns what they want when she gets what she wants. However, there is a new player in town who also wants what Stacey Marks has, and that's Detective Seng. Now, this is something I really love about 4 Season 3. This whole Detective Seng storyline, these sorts of dinners, plotting and scheming doesn't always have to be done in the streets. It can also be done at boardroom level and also within law enforcement. So this season definitely feels a lot closer to the original Power. For example, how Mike Sandoval was working for Felipe Lobos. This definitely is giving OG Power vibes. But Emma warned him that if Shen found out that he didn't tell them what Stacey Marks was up to with Claudia Flynn, it will backfire. But his plan was to use Stacey Marks, let her continue fumbling the Marquez case, and then he'll step in by using Claudia Flynn to take down Tommy Egan. And then he'll walk in and replace Stacey Marks as the new US Attorney of Chicago. That's Detective Seng's plan. He was purposely destroying Stacey Marks' case against the Marquez cartel. The judge granted Ortega's lawyer to suppress the drugs and cash, and now they were also filing a motion to dismiss, which is exactly what Detective Seng wants. From Stacey Marks' end, she really needs Claudia to come through, but I think her putting her entire reputation, this entire case on the hope that Claudia comes through, is definitely a bit hopeful and a bit amateurish from Stacey Marks. She hasn't even got control over Vic Flynn as she thinks, let alone someone like Claudia Flynn. Now, we did also have Claudia Flynn trying to convince Elise to record Tommy. She wanted to achieve what her father couldn't, which was to bring down Tommy Egan and put the Flynn name back on the map. But again, we've spoken about this before. Elise just simply isn't built for this world. She told Tommy that they were burning through coke and pills, and that one look from Tommy straight away, he knew straight away that something wasn't right. She was jumpy, asking questions, dropping things into the conversations that she shouldn't have been. She was trying to catch a seasoned criminal on tape, someone who has been caught on tape before back in Power, and he sure wasn't going to let it happen again. So he did warn her, she does have nice legs, but if she doesn't want to be riding around in a wheelchair for the rest of her life, she better stop this bullshit. And we have got this theme across this episode breakdown of OG Power Easter eggs, and again, we've seen what Tommy did to Domingo's legs back in Power. He's ruthless when it comes to those who betray him. Now, to Elise, Tommy does seem like a psychopath, which earlier this week I did disagree with. There's a big difference between psychopath and sociopath, and I do think Tommy falls into the category of sociopath. But Elise doesn't know Tommy like we know him. She's only seen and heard one side to Tommy's character, and that's why she's shitting bricks. She's not built for this world. She's not as strong as characters like Shanti or even as strong as Claudia. Claudia's dragged a person into this mess that just simply isn't built for this world. And now she's panicking. She's all on her own outside. She doesn't have anybody to protect her. And that's when Claudia Flynn said she'll make things right. We saw tears running down Claudia's face, but I can never tell when Claudia is using emotional manipulation or whether these tears are actually real and she's being serious. I guess it's just the kind of character Claudia is. I personally think it is a bit of both. I do think she does love Elise, but at the same time, there is also some emotional manipulation involved as well, because Claudia doesn't have anybody else on the outside. If she loses Elise, that's Claudia done. That's also a reason why she was forced to play the last card she had up her sleeve. The card that Claudia Flynn had up her sleeve was to serve herself up as bait. She knows the minute she walks out of prison, Tommy will want her dead, and we know that to be true. Earlier this week, we spoke about Claudia Flynn, how Claudia Flynn has probably earned her death 5 times over. Before the Liliana kill back in season 1, for just that one kill alone, she simply has to go. And that's something that Tommy would never have forgotten. That's what she meant when she said she took away something that he can never get back. Now, we all know Stacey Marks loves moving the goalposts. We spoke about it before. So she wanted Claudia also to testify against the Marquez cartel as well. And then they could talk. Which is where I think her conversation with Elise comes in. Even though Claudia knows that signing her own death certificate, maybe in her mind she's thinking she can find a way out a bit later on. Now, for Stacey Marks, she now has Vic Flynn under Tommy, and she now has Claudia Flynn as bait. So for Vic going forward, she wants Egan's reaction and next move to Claudia being released, which is quite clever from Stacey Marks, I do have to admit. Having both Flynns working from both different angles, she thinks she's got them right where she wants, and she believes that she's going to be able to put Tommy Egan in an orange jumpsuit. The major problem for Stacey Marks is Vic Flynn is still working for Tommy Egan. She can't trust Claudia Flynn, and she's about to receive a sizable donation from a major drug dealer, which will put a thorn in not just her campaign, but also maybe her job. We're going to come to that in just a second, because once Detective Seng also realized that Claudia Flynn was being released from prison and also agreed to testify against Ortega, he was also in panic mode. He made a call to say they have a problem, which I don't think was a call to the Ortegas or Shen. I think he was probably ringing Emma. But onto that donation that I believe will help bring down the entire house of cards. Now, we know from the previous episode Stacey Marks is in desperate need for contributors because of what happened in front of the media. Vic told him that she's in desperate need for cash, and Tommy thought, why not? Send a sizable donation and make sure it was tied back to a big scary drug dealer, Tommy Egan. And this is Tommy making that smart and strategic move that Gary Lennon spoke about prior to season 3. Tommy is a character who will definitely never change, but one thing that definitely has since OG Power, because he's no longer got Ghost by his side, he's now making these Ghost-esque moves himself. But we've also been speaking about this since episode 2 as well. Ever since Beth mentioned to Vic that he's got 2 people with their foot on his neck, he needs to figure out a way out from both. It's a very dangerous game that he seems to be playing, but what other option does Vic have at this moment in time? He's stuck. A bit later on, we did also see him give that $1 million check to Ray, which I do also want to question. We know Tommy and Diamond are making some serious money at this moment in time. We saw the bags of cash that they dropped off for Shay later on in the episode, just this episode alone. But he ain't actually cleaning any of money at this moment in time, because there are no laundromats or Club Truth like there was back in Power when Ghost gave him back his share. That was from legitimate funds. But I guess it is what it is. It is Power. Sometimes they do have to move the storyline forward. Now, one thing I do think we'll have trouble moving forward a bit later on is this relationship between Ray and Vic. He's going to have a big problem when Ray also finds out that the money is linked to a big drug dealer named Tommy Egan. I'm sure that's something that she'll definitely question, and I think the fact that Vic and Ray are also growing feelings for each other is a big problem going forward. No doubt Vic is slowly falling in love because he said it himself. He's been missing this ever since he lost Gloria. So I still do maintain this relationship will start to become more complex when the truth is revealed, and then let's see how it dictates the way Vic plays the game, because I have a funny feeling it'll definitely be different. Now, with Shanti's storyline in episode 4, we pick up with Janard telling Shanti that both Tommy and Diamond are keeping things from each other, but she wasn't happy with the moves that Janard's also been making, which was with DMac. She's been plotting and scheming in the background way back since season 2. She wants a regime change, and she's also been very patient because she thought she backed the right brother. But you could actually tell she was starting to second guess Janard, and in episode 4, she was definitely having her doubts. She told Raheem that she's always had love for boxing and chess, and now she's going to begin to play both. She's changing course, and it doesn't involve Janard. Gary Leonard did also tease that she's not afraid to make counter moves and punches, and now we're definitely beginning to see her throwing some and also making these clever chess moves. She came to see Manny a bit later on with the intention of expanding her own organization, and Manny was definitely down, but not after she heard that Shanti was down with Janard. Let's remember back in season 2, when Janard had his back against the wall and when he was being questioned by those within his own organization, which by the way, when you think about it, was a crazy name, treason. But in season 2, he robbed a couple of bricks from Manny and also Manny's chain. And Shanti did actually confront Janard. She questioned whether he stole her chain because she's not stupid. We know Shanti is very smart and she could see straight through Janard's bullshit because let's not forget, he did the same with her. But she was also mad at the fact that she was cash strapped and her name was also being dragged into debt by affiliation. You then have Janard putting a wad of cash in front of Shanti. That didn't help the situation either. Shanti is a character who prides herself on being independent, fierce, and ruthless. She stands on her own 2 feet, and she definitely doesn't want to be spoon-fed by her boyfriend. Now, Janard knew that he had to make things right. He came back to see Joey, who is actually played by one of the writers of Force, Sammy Horowitz. He's shown me a lot of love before, so big up Sammy. I know he'll be watching this breakdown as well. He's the one who Janard gave the chain to back in season 2, and when he refused to give it back, Janard gave him a bump of the dangerous fentanyl that's been hitting the streets, and that was lights out for Joey. He then made things right with Manny. He returned her chain, gave her some cash, and also said he'd add a sweetener on top of the deal with Shanti, which should have put Janard back in Shanti's good books, and it almost did. It almost worked. They were almost back on track until he mentioned that their next plan was to convince King Kilo that DMac didn't kill Mad Dog. Diamond had this conversation with Janard that they needed to convince him that it was Rashawn instead of DMac, but that's not what Shanti and Janard agreed on back in episode 1, and that's when you could see the change in her demeanor. This is the moment where she's definitely going to be making her solo moves without Janard. Just like Claudia Flynn, Shanti is very dangerous. Does it mean Tommy should trust Shanti when she approaches him and tells him to watch his back? Definitely not. She's still going to be playing her own game, and I don't think she'll be on Tommy's side either. As Gary Lennon said, she's Team Shanti. She's there to service herself. But over to the SODs where we saw Tommy pulling a move like Kanan did with Brock back in Power. Now Rashawn with his right-hand man Malik came to Diamond and Tommy to tell them that they were out. Rashawn run the SODs who we met back in season 2 episode 8 when Tommy and Diamond were putting together their coalition. But the one thing Tommy doesn't appreciate is when people speak and act out of line. There's a certain way to do business, and this definitely wasn't it. Like Pablo did in episode 3, he came in, he said, look, we've had a round table, the decision has been made, we can't let it affect our families back in Mexico. He was stern with his stance, but importantly, he was respectful. That's the one thing that's always remained the same with Tommy since day one. You show him loyalty and respect, he'll return the favor. But this definitely wasn't it. And we've seen what the likes of Kanan did to Brock back in season 2 of Power when he spoke out of line. And I'm going to come to that in just a moment. But as Rashawn and Malik left, they realized not all the members of the SODs were down with Rashawn. Malik was definitely up for grabs. And that also gave Tommy a plan. Give King Kilo Rashad instead of DMac. He also did mention he hasn't forgotten about Diamond either. He said he's got to wait for Diamond to pay him back as well, which we haven't seen yet. I assume that probably will come in episode 5. So definitely something just to keep in mind for episode 5 or maybe a later episode. Now, Tommy and Diamond did pay Rashawn a visit later on. After they confirmed with Malik, he was happy to step into his shoes. And Rashawn had a lot to say earlier, but he definitely wasn't talking now. The same thing with Brock that I referenced earlier on. Back in Power, Kanan cut out Brock's tongue for speaking out of line, and this was straight from Kanan's playbook. There's been a lot of references and Easter eggs to OG Power throughout this season, and this was definitely another. They then gave him the murder weapon for Mad Dog and sent Janard to convince King Kilo. Earlier on, Janard said he wasn't Houdini, but he did manage to pull a rabbit out the hat. He was able to kind of convince King Kilo. Personally, I'm not 100% sure if he has. He showed him the pictures of Rashawn, he said he had the murder weapon on him, but if he wants him to do DMac as well, just for good measure, he ain't got a problem with that either. For King Kilo, again, I'm not 100% sure if he's convinced, because he still wants confirmation from the SODs. So I guess with this one, I do think we're going to have to park it for the moment. Let's see how this unfolds when and if King Kilo is released. I do have a feeling we're definitely going to be coming back to it. But over to El Shay's return. Now, in episode 4, we saw the return of El Shay, and this did also give me Felipe Lobos vibes. I'm not saying El Shay is on Felipe Lobos' level, because I think Felipe Lobos is still one of the best villains that we've ever seen on Power. From the mannerisms, the way he spoke, his demeanor, I don't think anyone's come close to Felipe Lobos. But the aspect of torturing, the enjoyment, the no-nonsense approach, these cartel bosses should be fearless and should be feared. Now, Shay wasn't happy that Tommy and the CBI were causing chaos in the streets. Shay warned him back in season 2 he doesn't want any damage to his business. However, Tommy is also a character who knows never mess with a connect's money. Again, with Felipe Lobos, they made sure to pay him on time, even though their operation was being hit. Same thing here. He dropped 2 big bags of cash and also threw in a bit extra for the inconvenience. Now, Shay did warn Tommy that he doesn't want this affecting his organization. He wanted Tommy to nip this in the bud straight away. You also had Miguel Garcia in the background, who earlier in the week I likened him to Randall from Recess because he sounded just like him.
We'll soon have control of the entire playground.
There's no way I'm letting you move in on my territory. I'm telling Miss Finster. Randall. Miss Finster. Just the grown-up I wanted to see.
I mean, you get the gist. That's Miguel Garcia standing behind Shay, speaking to him in Spanish, trying to warn Shay that Tommy's moving into their territory, it's bad for business, basically going back to him like Randall used to do with Miss Finster. So the beef between Tommy and Miguel Garcia definitely continues, especially now that Tommy's asked for 3 times the product. Can Tommy handle it? Of course he can. Again, taking it back to Felipe Lobos' big shipment back in OG Power, we know Tommy can. He's done it before and he'll definitely do it again. The question is, can Miguel Garcia? We also have to remember the way Miguel is talking, it definitely is a bit rich, considering he's making deals behind Shay's back to not only get rid of Tommy, but also making a deal with a rival crew of the Estrada cartel, the Marquez cartel. Surely there's going to be a moment where Shay finds out, and it definitely won't end well for Miguel. Add that to the secret that Maria is holding about him killing Shay's son, they're definitely building up to something big, that's for sure. Now speaking of Maria, he did also come to see Maria in episode 4 as well. He wanted to invite Tommy and Maria to Sunday dinner, and it was also smart of him to say a restaurant of Maria's choice, because we know Miguel's intentions. It was made perfectly clear after the conversation with Roberto Ortega. He's going to give the logistics to where Ortega can slice and grill Tommy Egan. But it does look like we're in for a spicy Garcia family dinner in episode 5, with the addition of the Christmas canceller himself. We all know how family dinners end up in the world of power. We've definitely seen some explosive dinner scenes, so let's see how the Garcia dinner fares in the world of power. Now, I was wondering when we were going to get around to this scene, Tommy telling DMac that it's time for him to be baptized, just like Kanan did for him and Ghost. For DMac, he doesn't know who they are, but the important thing is, we do, and Tommy will definitely be teaching DMac every step of the way. He's about to earn his PhD in the streets, not the diploma that Genesis wanted, but DMac is now in the game. I think what maybe changed in episode 4 was, Tommy had a hard long think. I think he came to the realization that DMac is never going to stop making moves in the streets. He's never going to stop. He's street through and through. He doesn't want DMac to end up making a move that will backfire, not just for Tommy and the CBI, but also for himself. Tommy's also probably thinking, if I keep DMac close, less mess for me to clean up. I think at one point we've all probably wondered, what if Ghost really did teach Tariq the game?
Teach me your motherfucking game, Ghost.
Well, at least we're now going to see it with Tommy and DMac, so let's see how it goes, with DMac now officially in the game. Now, another character who is also back in the game is Claudia Flynn. She's got wings. She's finally out of the orange jumpsuit, she's back in the streets as bait, and with Tommy watching on, the question is, will he bite? Drop all your thoughts down below in the comment section on all things episode 4. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.